Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for your warm welcome address and giving us a food for thought with your 3 A's to make any organization future ready. I'm sure these will be the highlight of these curtain raiser discussions that we are going to have today and tomorrow. As Sir mentioned, the theme for this year's curtain raiser, as well as the annual conference scheduled next year, is Strategies for an Agile Work Culture Pathways to New Age. We indeed have a perfect galaxy of experienced stalwarts with us for this event. To begin with, we have amidst us Dr. Jack J. Phillips, chairman of ROI Institute, Inc., who is a world renowned expert on accountability, measurement, and evaluation. Dr. Phillips provides consulting services to Fortune 500 companies and major global organizations. He is the author and editor of over 100 books and has conducted over 100 ROI studies and helped thousands of professionals with the findings. Recipient of the Distinguished Contribution to Workplace Learning and Development from the American Society for Training and Development and the Thomas L. Gilbert Award from the International Society for Performance Improvement. Dr. Phillips' work has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Business Week, Fortune magazine, and National Geographic. Sir, we are extremely privileged to have you amidst us today. I would humbly request you to propose the keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Hello, I'm Jack Phillips, chairman of the ROI Institute. Thank you for coming to our session. Thank you for supporting IFTDO. At the ROI Institute, we help people see the value and show the value for what they do. We'll do that for them, we do it together, or we can teach them to do this. And for the last 30 years, we've helped many learning and development organizations do just that. We work in 70 countries through 45 partners. And that makes us feel so much at home with IFTDO. It's such a great organization. What we see is tremendous progress that we've made in learning and development, but still more to do. We need some serious changes, and we need to talk about that today. But there's no better organization to bring about global change than IFTDO, because you can reach so many places, so many countries, so many cultures. So we want to think about the future of learning. We've worked with it so much, and we see so many things occurring. We want to share our vision of where we think it's going, but more important, where it needs to go and where it needs to be. And it fits so well with the theme of the conference because we need an agile workforce to do it. Agile means that we're more flexible, we're adaptable to change, we do things simpler, we do things quicker, we do things to drive results. We need that. And so we'll talk about that. So in our process here, we have lots of materials that we want to leave you. We're sometimes known for having lots of content, and the content is needed to help you refer to this after the session is over. So the slides will give you a lot of content that gets into in depth with what we're delivering. But we also want you to have some takeaways. We're going to make available to you not only the slides and this recording, but the chapter 1 out of this book, The Business Case for Learning. It captures a lot of the essence of what we're saying here. And then we give you our job aid for using this process that we're describing, this ROI methodology that addresses so many of the issues that we're talking about today. And then there's a copy of the model in there that we'll be describing. So our objectives are pretty simple. We'll talk about the future of learning, but part of that would be making sure that we understand the different levels of outcomes, the challenges that we need going forward, and how we can work with what we've learned from Agile to be a part of it. Now, reflect for a minute. Where are we? We have some very serious performance challenges here. They've been with us for some time. We're getting better, but it's moving too slowly. Look at these statements here. I want you to think for a minute with the work that you've done in learning and development. Would you say that that statement is mostly true or mostly false? So let's look at each one. And we collected a lot of polling data before the pandemic and during the pandemic, before webinars, before conference presentations. And we've been able to capture this and track it over time. So the very first one, that most learning and development is wasted. What do you think? Mostly true, mostly false? Well, somewhere between 80 and 90% of your colleagues say that's true. That means it's not used. They feel that way. That's waste. We call that scrap learning sometimes. Hey, that's too high. We got to do something about that. It won't go away unless we tackle it and work on it, like those agile software developers did. Look at number 2. The learning outcome desired by executives is rarely measured. See, that's a little dangerous. It's like we know what they need, but we're not delivering it. So would you say that's mostly true or mostly false? Well, about 90% of your colleagues say that's true. That's a pretty tough situation, isn't it? We've got to start measuring what they want to see. They, meaning the executives who fund us, who support us, who give us this opportunity. We've got to do that. And then number 3, most learning providers, and that's us. We don't have data to show that we make a difference. To make a difference, that means we have to use what we've learned and have an impact. That's making a difference. What do you think? Is that mostly true? Mostly false? Your colleague says that's mostly true. Again, about 90%. That's way too high. Now, of course, that number varies with groups, but we're talking about averages here. 80 to 90% say that's true. Let's go to the next one. Most executives see learning as a cost and not an investment. What do you think? Is it mostly true? Mostly false? Hey, this pops up to about 95% or more. Say that's mostly true. And it's like we're thinking, what bad executives we have. They see us as a cost and not investment. And I'd say, well, maybe it's us. We're just not showing them any data that convinces them that it's an investment. So we're going to have to take responsibility and ownership for this. And we got to do something about it. And most executives most executives view hard skills as more important than soft skills, more valuable than soft skills. What do you think? Is it mostly true, mostly false? Here we get a resounding yes again, and it's usually around 90%. Well, but we know soft skills are more valuable. At least they talk, even executives talk about it. You see, the most admired organizations, the most progressive organizations, the most successful organizations, the most sustainable organizations, the most innovative organizations, and the great places to work are all created by soft skills, usually in the leadership area, communications and team buildings. So we got to work on that because we don't want them to cut away soft skills when budgets get a little tough. And that's what they do. Cut it away. We don't need that. Our partner in Australia says, avoid the F word. And we says, what is that? That's fluff. He says, when an executive calls what we do fluff, they want to control it, eliminate it, diminish it, not budget for it. Fluff is what they call soft skills. We don't want that. We got to work on that. This situation even gets worse for virtual. We saw these numbers go up with the pandemic because we're all in virtual, and these all begin to intensify even more. You see, we'd like to see faults for every one of these, but they're true. Very true. We got to change it. How do we change it? think about the value chain. The value chain describes it all. This shows the value of what we do as we implement a learning program. We have inputs, which is the volume. That's the people involved, the hours involved, the convenience, the cost. And then we have reaction. Reaction is critical because we're looking for how relevant this would be. The importance to success, your success, something that they would actually use and maybe recommend to others. And the learning, skills, and knowledge. Hey, we do a good job here of measuring these, all three of these, but we begin to drop off here. See, when we say we don't have data to show we make a difference, there is our culprit. We don't measure their application to see if they're using the content, they're using it frequently, and they're successful with it. But then that's not enough for executives. Application without impact is just being busy. We need impact. We need to see how it connects to things like productivity and sales, time, quality, waste, errors, rework, incidents, accidents, turnover, all of those things that are important to an organization. And yes, we have some intangibles in there as well. And then we can go to the fifth level here, the fifth level of outcomes. See, these are all levels of outcomes. Reaction through ROI. ROI is taking the impact, sorting out the effects of what we do, and converting that to money, and it becomes monetary benefits. And we calculate the ROI by having monetary benefits minus cost divided by cost times 100. And we also do the benefit cost ratio. There you have it. And these percentages you have there is our recommended percentage of programs each year to evaluate at that level. You see, we don't have to do so much at level 4 and 5, just enough to show our funders that it makes a difference. Here's the funder, the CEOs. This is a major study that we conducted a few years ago. We reported it in this book called Measuring for Success. We did it for ATD. The subtitle is What CEOs Really Think About Learning Investments. And we found some things here that didn't really surprise people, but it's really a wake-up call for what we have to do. And that is, the one that we measure most is the one that's least desired. You see, these executives, 96 of them, they're top executives, very large organizations. We basically put these data sets in front of them and say, do you measure this now? These are the percent checking yes. Should you measure it in the future? This is a number checking yes. And we say rank these from 1 is the most important, 8 is least important. So you can see what we measure most is least important to them. What's most important to them is something we measure least, impact. 96% says we should have that. Hey, 74% says we should have ROI. So we've got to change our ways. And we need to change our way. Think about the future. Let's borrow something from Peter Drucker years ago. The best way to predict the future is to create it. So we really need to together create the future here. And we could see some things that are in the way for us having the kind of future we want. What you see here is what we need as the future from our traditional way of viewing and seeing and operating the learning and development function to what we have is the emerging view. This is our future here. And I want to look at these particular issues of input to outcome. We got to focus on outcome. Cost needs to be flipped to investment. We need to be seen as an investment. And we need to be seen as a value driver, not just a necessity, that something we have to do, a necessary evil, as some people have referred to L&D. And we have to think about learning analytics, pushing it beyond the science of learning, but the science of using the learning. And then needs assessment is more about alignment now, alignment to the business. And reaction and learning, which we measure so much, it's got to be replaced more with impact and ROI. So here's the future as we see it. We think we'll get there. One is that most learning will be hybrid or blended. We saw almost everything go virtual during the pandemic, but now the question is what comes back? And it's really up to us to decide how much will be continue to be virtual. If it delivers results, it'll stay there. If it doesn't, it'll move back in person. We think it will because we learned a lot and we're doing a lot. Most learning is not wasted. We got to get that stigma out of the way of scrap learning. Hey, we got to show people we make a difference. We know we make a difference. We just don't have data to show that. We got to have that. And we got to make sure we connect to the business. That's what executives want to see. We got to show them we connect. We can't just assume that anymore. And hey, and they need to see learning as investment, not a cost. The way to do that is to come to that ROI calculation for some programs, the major programs. And they have to see soft skills as more valuable. We know it, you know it. We don't have data to show it. And that's where we need to go. So let's create that together. And Agile can help here. So I want to go back to, when we think about Agile, we often thinking about Agile software development. You see, 20 years ago, software development was very bureaucratic, very cumbersome, took too long. There was a lot of errors in the process. The results were not always there, and the customers are not happy. So a group of 17 people got together 20 years ago to create a manifesto for software development, and they called it Agile software development. And you can see what's going on here. It's looking at things like this. It says, through this work, we have come to value individuals and interaction over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following the plan. And most of all, they drive results. So what we've done a few years ago is we look at what we do in the evaluation area. We want to do more than just evaluate. We want to drive results and get results and be flexible, be adjustable, have process improvement at the utmost state of mind. And so we have this ROI methodology model that's really designing for the delivery of business results. And yes, it evaluates as well. So it designed for results. It delivers results. And yes, it measures results. But it's a change in thinking because we start with the end in mind here. We start with a clear business measure. So much of learning doesn't start there. It starts with learning, but that's not where we want to be. Our work is not done when we have learning. Our work is not done until we have impact. And that's where we have to be. And we have to make sure we have the right solution because sometimes we do implement the wrong solution because too many times we think learning is a solution to everything. A lot of executives think that we're the best solution around because it can fix any problem. But we're the first to go out the door when times get tough. How do you make sense out of that? We just don't show them the results. And that's where we're missing so much. We've got to expect success, making sure that we have objectives, making sure that success is defined at the impact level for all of our programs, and have objectives now maybe for not just learning, but also application and maybe impact. And then we have to make it matter to those poor souls who are going to make it work. That's the participants in our program. Make it matter to them and make it stick in the job. Make it matter means level 1 and 2. Reaction and learning are measured and they're there. Make it stick means that it's routine, systematically on the job, and that's application and impact. And then we have to go into analysis for the executives. These 5 blocks all are preceded by make it credible. Make it credible by sorting out the effects of our program on the data. Sorting out what we've done, that's very important. Make it credible by making sure that we have very conservative value for the measure, monetary value, convert it to money in a conservative way. Make it credible, making sure we have all the cost of the program in there, direct and indirect, and make it credible by calculating ROI using the two most common measures, ROI measures on the planet, the benefit cost ratio and the ROI expressed as a percent. And then we realize make it credible means we have intangibles. We have intangibles are those measures that we could not convert to money credibly with a reasonable amount of time. Still important. We got to make sure it's connected. Then we tell a story. We got data and we got narrative, numbers and narrative. We need that. Storytelling is such a big part of design thinking. It's telling a story. We got stories for reaction and learning, application and impact. And now we can present the data along with that. Data at level 1, reaction. Level 2, learning. Level 3, application. Level 4, impact. Level 5, ROI, plus intangibles. 6 types of data. Then we use that to optimize our results using black box thinking, making sure that we make things better. Always, even if it's successful, we're going to make it better. Now, we've got some challenges along the way, but we've got some tools that can help us. For the manifesto, they had some 12 principles here. I'm going to leave this with you. You probably have seen this, but it's in the slides that you'll get here. As you look at these, you can see it's all about making things better, improving things from where we are. And we've got our 12 principles as well. These are standards. Standards to make it better, to make it more credible, to make it more believable as we go through the evaluation. So we try to parallel a lot of what's happening with agile development in our own process as well here. So let's look at some challenges we have. Challenges we have as an L&D professional as we work through the process. Here's the first one, the alignment. Connecting what we do to the business. We need to do it. Remember, that's the first step in the process. Start with why. The second step in the process, make sure we have the right solution. But if you think about this alignment, this is a handy tool for people to look at. Here's the value chain that we just talked about as we measure reaction, learning, application, impact, ROI. But the measures for that come from objectives, not just learning objectives, but other objectives as well. But where do the objectives come from? More needs assessment. So we have 5 levels of needs assessments here. Payoff needs means, is it worth it? Do we want more value out of this than we're putting into it? A positive ROI. Yes, would be the answer to most executives. That's connected to the business. So these two come together. The value we deliver comes from the business need. So this is making sure we connect here to begin with. Then we ask the question, what is it we need to be doing to improve the business need? Sometimes we need new skills, we need new knowledge. And then we don't have them. We need them, so we've learned them. And that's a learning need. And a preference need is how do we prefer that? Together, this is a feasible solution. So this helps us visualize the alignment, what we have to do to align to the business. And the second challenge is to make sure we have those objectives. See, we're stuck with level 2, learning. A few years ago, we wrote this book with ATD, and it's called Beyond Learning Objectives. What they're telling their profession is that we're quite good at developing learning objectives. We now need to get better at developing application objectives and maybe impact objectives, and yes, even ROI if we're going there. See, the subtitle is Develop Measurable Objectives that link to the bottom line. We've got to do that. We've got to move away from just having learning objectives. We can do it. It's possible. Here's our third challenge. It's been out there a long time, and that's to make sure that we transfer what we've learned to the job. If we don't, we have the waste that we've talked about. Hey, this is a process that was brought into our profession by Mary Broad and John Newstrom back in the 80s when they wrote a book, Transfer of Training. It brought this matrix that is so powerful and so useful today. as we think about learning program, things we do before, during, and after learning. And things we can do with the manager of the participant themselves, and then the facilitator, or maybe the organizer for a virtual program. We want to work at all 9 of those blocks, things that we do to design for application and impact. That's where we're missing it, particularly with virtual. We just don't design for people to use it. And this is why so many of them don't use it, because we didn't plan for it, design it, put tools in place, enablers in place, have people in place to help us with that. And we discovered that the number 1 and 2 blocks is these two, number 1 here and number 3 here. Things that we must do with the manager. We cannot leave the manager out of this, but we have to do things with them. It doesn't take so much time, but bring them in, have them set expectation, and have them follow up and be a part of it. Yes, we can do it, and we are doing it. And collecting data. Hey, we got so many ways to collect data these days. This is showing the kinds of data that's collected for the different levels of data from that value chain. We're getting quite good at that. The best method for level 3 is observation, but that doesn't always work. We can always use surveys and questionnaires, but we have to work hard to make them credible, and we're doing that. And for impact, we can always go to the data themselves. That's the data in the system. If not, they can give it to us in a questionnaire or an action plan or a performance contract. We have tools to get there that can get to where we need to be. Here's another big challenge, and that is, how do we sort out the effects of what we do from other influences? We have to always do it. It's one of our 12 standards. We have to do it. Hey, the good news, this is from our users, the most recent benchmarking from last year. 34% of the studies that are being done are using classic experimental versus control group. And then 40% of them are using a simple trend line analysis, which is very useful. It's projecting the pre-programmed data into the post period and look at the actual versus the projected. And with 2 conditions being met, we can use that. And you can see we're getting a lot of use. And then we're using some mathematical modeling that's very credible. But sometimes we have to use estimates. If we use estimates, we only go there if we cannot get one of those first 3 that I just mentioned done first. But we're going to always do it. But estimates can be credible if they're taken from the most credible person or groups, and where they're taken in a non-threatening, unbiased way, and they're adjusted for the error, which is, again, another one of our standards. So converting data to money, good news here. We think about, how do you get to money with a training program? Well, you first connect it to the impact, the business measure. You've tracked the business measure. When you've improved it, you isolate the effects of the program on it so that we know how much of it goes to our particular process, and now we convert it to money. The good news is that it's already there. We have something called standard values. That means it's already been calculated and it's put in front of us already to get our attention. Like maybe, for every lost time accident we have, it costs us this much money. For every customer complaint we have, it costs this much money. For every employee turnover we have, is costing us this much money. See, that's put in front of us to get our attention. That's the good news. If not, there's some experts who can tell us, or we can go to external databases. We can get there. We can get there credibly. That's the important point. It's a challenge, but doable. Convert data to money. And finally, making sure that we use this to optimize our results. That is, if you think about what we're doing, we're measuring here to evaluate. Evaluation is making decisions with that data that we collect. And then we make it better. Our focus is on improvement here. You remember we used black box thinking for improvement. Black box thinking comes from the aviation field, where we take those black boxes, voice data recorder, systems recorder. When a plane crashes, we take those boxes and find out what happened, and we correct it so it doesn't happen again. That's done by regulation and by law. We want to do it by our habits Let's get in the habit of making things better. If we have success, let's make it better. If we have failure, lack of success, let's make it acceptable. We keep making it better. So we're improving to optimize, and when we do that, we make a better case for funding so that we get our allocation. We want to make sure that we get our share. We want to make sure that our budget's not cut when things get a little tough or the economic situation is uncertain. We need it. In tough times, we may need learning more than good times. So keep that in mind. Number 6, optimize results. When you do this, things really help. Things really pay off. It's a way to defend our budget. Make sure we connect to the business need. Showing the contribution in clear, credible terms of a particular program. Getting some respect and influence maybe from our top executives. Our own team sees more value here. And getting support for the project and process improvement. Hey, that's the number one reason we suggest your evaluator program is to make things better. Process improvement. Hey, you can get a seat at the table if you want it. Huge payoffs. We've got to go down this path. We got to show more value of what we're doing. If we don't, we're going to continue to have the problems that we just pointed out in those serious performance issues at the beginning of the session. So here's my advice for you. We got to be proactive with this. Don't wait for someone to make you do this. Don't wait for an executive to say, show me the ROI on this program. Because when you do, when you wait and get that request, 3 things happen to you. Number 1, you got a short timeline to show that data that person is asking for. Number 2, you're defensive. You want to be on the offensive. You want to drive this yourself. And number 3 is that ROI is now on an executive's agenda. You want to keep it on your agenda. You want to make sure that you are driving the ROI process. So remember, when it comes to delivering results, hope is not a strategy. Luck is not a factor. Doing nothing is not an option. Things have changed and will continue to change. Change is inevitable. Progress that we make is optional. So it can be done and you can get there. So just a quick review. We're facing probably the same kind of problems in learning and development that the software industry faced 20 years ago when those 17 people convened to tackle software development and make it better, make it agile. We can do it here with learning, make it agile. We'll offer you this process as a way to get there. Again, we encourage you to download these items that will help you get there using this process. This methodology has become the most used evaluation system in the world. It didn't get there overnight. It took more than 3 decades. But it got there by being user-friendly and user-driven. Our users approve the standards that we have. And it's very valid and reliable so that we can meet the needs of researchers, evaluators, and professors. And it's CEO and CFO friendly. Executives see it and they like it. We encourage you to go there. If you want to learn, we've got some ways to get there. Here's some dates for this certification that we offered to become a certified ROI professional. Over 6,000 people have reached that designation already. We'd like to have you a part of that process. So let us know if you have any questions. You can send them to us. We'd be happy to respond. But in closing, I want to say our future never looked brighter. We've got good support for learning. We need to keep that support and get more support. We need to make learning a value driver for organizations. Learning to really make a difference and learning to really take us where we need to be. With all the change that we have, learning is the only way we can get to where we need to be. Thank you so much for being a part of the conference. Thank you so much for listening to this session. Let us know if we can help you in any way if you have questions at all. Thank you and have a good day.